Welcome to the San Jose Hockey Now podcast. This is Sheng Peng, editor-in-chief of San Jose Hockey Now, also with NBC Sharks. Find me on Twitter at Sheng_Peng.
This is Keegan McNally. I'm a writer for San Jose Hockey Now. You can find my work at Halfwall Hockey on Twitter, my website, halfwallhockey.com, as well as on San Jose Hockey Now. It's great to be here.
We've got a real special guest on this podcast, Jason Demers. Daddy talks about where he is with retirement and shares some exciting news about possible TV work with NHL Network and, wait for it, maybe NBC Sharks. He also shares hilarious shark stories and tells us everything we need to know about the holiday sweater video.
Yeah, it's an amazing interview. You guys should watch it. Jason was a super cool guy that sat down with us for a very long time and talked all about his future plans and a whole bunch of stuff. So before we get to that, it was, as expected, a August for the NHL.
Can I interrupt you too? I just remembered something that Jason said. He also called out Ozzy Weisblot, and we didn't expect that. And it's totally worth waiting till the end to listen to that. I just remember that right now. That's hilarious. Anyway,
he has some quips about the Barracuda boys that I think is interesting,
he did.
including Ozzy. But it was it was in August in the NHL, which means that this week basically nothing happened.
Mm-hmm.
For the Sharks, there was pretty much no news. League-wide, the RFA that everybody was waiting to see if they're going to sign their contract. I guess the upcoming free agent that got signed was Austin Matthews, who signed a huge deal today. Mm-hmm. But that's pretty much it. So we thought, just because we don't have much to talk about, that we're going to do a super early, way too early, ultra early 2024 draft preview to talk about a few of the top guys who we think the Sharks fans should probably keep an eye on for this coming year. Important note, Sharks have currently 2 first-round picks, could maybe get a third if the New Jersey Devils make the, I think it's the Eastern Conference Finals next year. Then their pick would upgrade to a third first-round pick for the Sharks. So
and keep in mind just how early this is. We did the same exercise last summer. We might have had, Callum Ritchie in the top 5. I don't know anybody else that pops in your mind that dropped a bit. But so again, this is a way too early exercise, but I think it's still instructive in terms of just, going into the year, just who are a few of the names to kind of keep an eye on early on and see if they kind of hold their status, kind of holds, or if they rise.
Yeah. And I mean, every year there's a few guys that we kind of know are going to be probably top 5, top 10.
Sure.
And then a bunch of guys that we overestimate and underestimate. So we're going to name a few. There's a couple of early draft trends that I think are interesting that we should get into. And we should probably start at the top, which the biggest name to know is former San Jose Junior Shark, Macklin Celebrini. Sheng, have you heard of Macklin Celebrini before?
Yes, I have. And also, too, going to Boston University. So he sounds like he's ready-made to be a Shark.
Boy, that, with the Sharks having a little bit of a specific Boston connection and him being a junior Shark, it kind of feels right? So that means...
Which means it won't happen, and the Sharks will lose the lottery and end up with a 6th pick.
100% won't happen. Or they have the ability to draft him and they take somebody we've never heard of.
Right.
But he is the presumed number 1 for the upcoming 2024 draft. He's a 5'11" center. He's been basically all over the map for the past year or so. He had an amazing USHL season. He's a Canadian playing in USA Juniors. He put up 86 points in 50 games as an underager, which is good. It's actually better record per points per game wise than Adam Fantilli had at the same age, basically. So a lot of hype surrounding Macklin Celebrini. He's also known for not being even though he's only 5'11", not being particularly, a soft forward who's not really going to engage in board battles. He's actually regarded for his two-way play as well. So, and like you said, Sheng, he's going to be heading to the NCAA. So any thoughts about Macklin as we move down the list here?
I think in general, I've checked with a couple of people and just talked about beyond Celebrini, just sort of what is the consensus, 1-2 so far. And I've read a few mocks, and right now they have Celebrini going number 1. Number 2 is Cole Eiserman. And then there's a number 3 that we're going to talk about in a second, Ivan Demidov. But want to let you finish your thoughts about Celebrini and Eiserman. But anyway, talking to a few people, though, definitely the Celebrini and Eiserman do belong on the top there. But the other name I mentioned, Demidov, I think has a lot of support too.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Macklin is a center, right? And we know how much that NHL GMs love centers. So he's kind of like, not just for his position, going to be probably number 1, but it doesn't hurt, right? And the other 2 guys that are 2 and maybe 3 that we'll talk about in Demidov are both wingers. Eiserman is super interesting as a possible number 2, or maybe a little bit later, depending on what happens. But Eiserman is like a very gifted goal scorer. He was almost a goal per game in the USHL. And he was actually over a goal per game when he played for the national team development program. He was 26 goals in 20 games, but had something like 6 or 8 assists at the same time.
So 6 or what? 8 what?
Assists. So
assists. Okay. Oh, so it's
26 goals. Yeah, exactly. He's a very gifted goal scorer, but there's a lot of people that are questioning, like, is there anything beyond that, or how much of that part of his game is really going to translate as you move up? This was like, it's a pretty it's a pretty common argument, I'd say, about these kind of players, right? When they're really gifted junior goal scorers, how well are they going to translate as they move up? It's a reason why a player like Cole Caulfield, another Cole, went down to, I think, 15th overall from Montreal. Not just his, one-dimensional play, but he was also 5'7" or 8 or however big Cole Caulfield is. So it's interesting to see what's going to happen with Eiserman, who's a little bit bigger. He's 5'11", not that small, and super young. He, if you don't know, the draft cutoff date every year is September 15th. So the closer you are on the before end of that date, the younger you are in terms of your draft. So he's August 29th is his birthday. He's 2 weeks from being eligible for the next draft. So he's very, very young. And he is mostly a goal scorer right now. So people are kind of wondering how much more to his game. But did you get any feedback on Eiserman from sources?
No, just that he is definitely a name in that group. Moving on to the other guy right in there is Demidov. And Demidov is interesting for a number of reasons. Obviously, there's that, the Russian factor. He actually plays with Michkov in the KHL. But Demidov is considered a different player, though, from what I've understood for talking to people, that he's a more of a two-way kind of player. And also, too, at least right now, I think the things with Michkov, things about his character, things like that maybe they weren't so apparent, or they weren't talked about as much a year out of the draft. So who knows what's going to happen with Demidov, if he's going to be demonized. Get it? But
pretty good. This is decent. I give it like a C+.
But speaking with a source today, though, Russian source that I trust, he is considered kind of just a great guy, great teammate. So none of the same kind of question marks that maybe Michkov had. So the way that my source put it, he actually might take Demidov over Michkov. Like, he just had to choose one or the other. Michkov does have a higher offensive ceiling, but Demidov is, again, more of a two-way type. More of a guy that can lead you in different ways. And so I think that he is very much a guy, and at least in terms of talent, same with Michkov, that he might really be in a conversation for 2 or even 1 in this draft. Just based on pure talent. And again, this is right now. This is a year away from the draft, so this may not hold true after the season. But right now, though, he is really belongs in this discussion. And of course, like Michkov, what someone told me was if he had an American or Canadian passport, he'd be we'd be talking about Celebrini, Eiserman, Demidov in whatever order. But the mocks I've seen right now seem to have Demidov more as a number 3, but he doesn't seem to have quite the red flags of a Michkov, so that might help him. We'll see. Obviously, he still is, playing in Russia. So also too, I learned this interesting thing about Demidov's contract. So it does expire at the end of the 2024-25 season, which sounds great, because that's of course that was part of the problem with Michkov, that teams would have to wait 3 years. They'll have to wait until after the 25-26 season to get their hands on Michkov. So it sounds like you could get Demidov faster. But my source suggested to me that he believes that Demidov will sign on for 2 more years, which again, that is just one source saying it. That's not, I know this for a fact that he's going to do that. But if Demidov does do that, that obviously could lower his draft stock, because that obviously means that he's instead of being 2 years away from NHL, he's now 40 years away from NHL. So that might be teams may not like that. But anyway, that's just a one bit of interesting insight that I heard. And also too, I'm gonna add one more thing about, since we're talking about Russians and Demidov. My source gave a thumbs up to the Sharks' hiring of Igor Eronko as their Russian area scout. Says that he has good reputation in Russia, seen as an honest guy, a good evaluator of talent. And so just wanted to pass that along.
Yeah, Demidov is super interesting, because you're right. It was the story of the draft for last year was all about Michkov. Not all about it. Bedard obviously was, Bedard. But it was.
There is no Bedard in this draft, though, right? There is no
I don't think so. Yeah, I mean, you're getting into the picking out small little details, but I think Bedard is still regarded as a higher end prospect than somebody like Celebrini, and Celebrini would be the closest one. So, they're really good. Eiserman, Celebrini, Demidov all seem like a very strong top 3 for a forward group at the top of the draft. I wouldn't say that it's better than last year, especially with the weirdness about Michkov, who I still think is a top 3 talent from last year's draft too, and went number 7. So I think about Demidov, I watched him a lot because I watched Michkov a lot, and Michkov and Demidov are kind of playing some preseason games in Russia right now, which are fun to check out. Michkov's actually playing center, which is weird. They're just trying him out to see how he does, and he's playing with Demidov on his wing a lot of times. They really feed off of each other super well. Super skilled players. Michkov is a better shooter than Demidov, but Demidov still has a good looking shot. And then Demidov's more of like a creative playmaker type that is, again, has that dynamic skill that just pops off, that you notice and you say, how in the hell did he do that kind of thing? Pretty frequently. So I would say it's tough to choose between the two of who I would take. I would still lean Michkov, but I think, as we move forward, Demidov might get, even more fanfare than Michkov, especially if he doesn't sign that 2-year extension.
My source, he offered this, and this is a very the ceiling of these guys, but who would you prefer? Kucherov, which is the obvious Michkov comparison that's been out there for a while, or Datsuk, but a winger, which is what my source suggested about Demidov. He really likes Demidov, and so just I guess I would just say to everybody that don't sleep on Demidov. He doesn't seem to have 100%. Quite as many question marks with Michkov, except for the contract thing. And so maybe Demidov might go higher. And now the Sharks have a scout right there who can watch live every single Demidov game if he chooses to.
Yeah, he certainly is. Or he would definitely be either number 1 or probably number 1 in the Sharks prospect system if they got him. So, and we're going to talk about that in just a little bit about where would our most recent draft pick, Will Smith, kind of slot in around these guys, or maybe could be again
in our
all
too
this
early predictions,
way early, ultra early. But where could he kind of slot around here? But anyways, yeah, I really do love Demidov. I think you're right. He does have a little bit more of a 200-foot game than Michkov does. And you know, character concerns aside, it's always hard to see those kind of things when you don't really have a lot of contact with a guy. But Demidov seems like a great kid. So would not be opposed to the Sharks draft him. Hopefully the Sharks aren't either if they're in that position. But the other thing about it, like we mentioned, there's the theme that Macklin Celebrini is kind of the only big center that, by big, I mean big time center, that's kind of available at the top of this draft. It seems like there's a few other forwards that are mostly wingers that could be considered in the top 10, guys like Maxim Masse, Tanner Howe, Konsta Helenius, all of which are, Konsta Helenius plays in Finland. He's more of a power winger type. Occasionally he'll play center. Tanner Howe played with Bedard and put up absurd numbers, as one might expect, playing with Bedard.
Yeah, you better. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And Maxim Masse put up really good numbers in the QMJHL. Bigger winger who's got some slower feet and a good shot. But there's not a lot of centers. So what there is a lot of this year is high-end defensemen in this draft in 2023. It's always been, or 2024. It's been kind of regarded as the defenseman draft for a couple of years. Basically highlighted by a couple of guys. First one to note is Aron Kiviharju, who is a smaller Finnish defenseman who's been well regarded because he's an amazing skater, offensively gifted, puck-moving defenseman who's been playing against men for many years and against men on the Finnish national team for a couple of years as well, always kind of playing a level up. And he's like this guy that's always been regarded in the top 5 for this draft, or maybe even like top 3, 4, but he might see his name drop down a little bit more as other players come up, which we kind of see every year. So Kiviharju is one guy to know about because he's a guy that's been kind of talked about for many years as a top defenseman in this draft, but he's kind of been a little bit supplanted by a few other names, notably a Belarusian defenseman who's playing in the USHL, Artyom Levshunov, who is very interesting. He's a 6'2", 6'3", offensive right-handed shot defenseman, which, NHL GMs love 6'2", 6'3", right-handed shot offensive defenseman. That's kind of
he's going to Michigan State, right? I think I saw that.
Yep. So he's going to Michigan State. So he played in the USHL last year, put up great numbers for a defenseman. He looked fantastic. He is more offensive minded and he's not like totally rounded out his game defensively, but he is physical and he does, he gets in good position defensively already, and he doesn't really cheat for his offense that much. There's a few names that we'll talk about in a minute that are very like cheat for your offense, going to rush up the play every time. He's very smart with how he jumps into play, and he has an excellent point shot. He reminds me, and this is, again, because we're a year out, he reminds me of Brent Burns. And I'm like, I don't want to say he's going to become Brent Burns, right, but like that kind of style, maybe needs to round a defensive game to even get to Burns's level. But, that kind of right-handed shot offensive guy that likes to jump up into the play, good point shot, reminds me of Burns. So he's kind of moved up a little bit. There's a few other defensemen I want to talk about. 2 brothers of prior draft picks, which is always fun. Cole Hutson, who is brother of Montreal's 2022 draft pick, Lane Hutson. If you haven't heard of him, he is fantastic. He's a defensive phenom who put up, 1.5 points per game in his freshman year as a defenseman, which is nuts. Almost something that's never been done before, but also very small. Cole Hutson, who is his brother, just as small, but it may be a little bit better of a skater. Actually put up better, points per game than Lane did in the same year last year. And then Adam Jiricek, who, if you remember, is the brother of David Jiricek, who was a top 5 draft pick from 2022. He's also in this draft.
Does Cole Hutson, does he seem like a guy that could go in, because Lane went in the second round, of course, and so does Cole seem like a guy that can go higher or like go in the top 10?
I honestly think, and this is just my prediction, is that the Lane Hutson, like, being like could be a Hobie Baker candidate in his freshman year, kind of paved the way for players like Cole Hutson to maybe get picked a little bit higher. Okay. So I think if Cole Hutson follows the trajectory, which again, he's outscoring his brother at the same age. If he continues that trajectory, I think he'd be a first round pick instead of like a second, like Cole was, or like Lane was. Too many Hudsons in this building.
Okay, but we're probably not talking for the Sharks. If the Sharks end up with the top 5 pick,
maybe for their second first round pick.
Okay,
but you never know. But you're right. He is just as small, and there's a bunch of guys in this list that might go above him. Just interesting in the context of him also being a brother of a 2022 pick, like Adam Jiricek. Adam Jiricek probably is going to go ahead of Cole Hutson just because he's bigger, good skater. He's kind of like his brother, but I'd say maybe a touch less offensively gifted than his brother. But is a better skater. So because that was always the knock on David Jiricek was his skating before the draft. So a few other guys to mention here on the defense. Zayne Parekh is an interesting one. He scored 21 goals as a 16-year-old defenseman in the OHL, which is good.
Ryan Merkley numbers.
Yeah, he's kind of the guy that gives me a little bit of maybe Merkley vibes, or maybe like Ty Nelson, if anybody remembers his name from a few years ago that Seattle drafted.
Vaguely, yeah. Was he Islanders or?
Ty Nelson was a Seattle draft pick. I
think Kraken. Round. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
I thought you meant Thunderbirds. Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. No, he was but Parekh, I can't ever say if that's correct or which one is correct, but he definitely has a little bit of a gonna cheat for my offense kind of thing. At least he did last year. Things can change, and he's a competitive guy. That was always a knock on Merkley too, was that he wasn't competitive enough. And Parekh definitely is. It's just he does, cheat for his offense. You can't really deny it. The prototypical going to be drafted high because he's a 200-foot, left-handed, solid as a rock defensively, decent offensive defenseman is Sam Dickinson. He, ideal size, great skater. I said good skater, and seems to be the guy that's going to be picked high because he kind of fits that mold of an NHL defenseman that teams kind of love, kind of like a better Oliver Bonk from this past draft, who was drafted pretty high, I think in the 20s. Sam Dickinson's probably going to be like top 15, top 10, just because of the way people see him. But that's still too early. But like I said, this draft is like defenseman loaded.
It's really interesting though, because you mentioned that this is a more defense. It's a better defensive draft, and it sounds like it. But then still, though, right now, though, I would say the consensus top 3 is still forwards, which is just funny.
Yeah.
I guess the big question that we'll try to answer is obviously, will Celebrini, Eiserman, and Demidov kind of maintain their status or improve it? But also, too, if any of the defensemen here can break into this sort of quote unquote, top 3.
Yeah, I would say the biggest ones would be somebody like Levshunov, just because I think he checks all the boxes that NHL teams are looking for. And he fits every single mold. I think he would be the guy to kind of challenge in that top 3. And I think the one guy that might fall out of it, if I had to guess, all guessing, would be Eiserman. And only because I think his, or Demidov, obviously, if, his contract thing comes into play. But I think Eiserman's game isn't as well-rounded as some would like in the top 3. Even if he is a fantastic goal scorer.
Okay.
So, but yeah, there's a few other names, Carter Yakemchuk, Henry Mews, Zeev Buium, all have been regarded as probable first-round picks for this year. Somewhere probably in the 12 to 15 range of picks of the first round are going to be defensemen, which is a lot for a draft. So
right.
Just a few names to look out for next year.
Right. So yeah, maybe the Sharks, if they end up with the top pick, you get a forward, one of the three that we've mentioned here, or somebody else, and then with their second first round pick, replace Erik Karlsson with another defenseman. So
yeah, I think there's definitely a possibility that in the teens, you could get a guy that becomes your number one or number two guy.
Right.
It's possible. I think there's enough talent there that one of these dudes is going to pop off and be a top pairing defenseman, and then a few guys that are going to be top 10 or probable top line defensemen. So
I'm not rooting against Erik Karlsson for sure, but obviously for Sharks fans, it would be awesome if he has a very similar season to last year. He drops 100 points, and
they want Penguins to get 11th and then lose the lottery, and then I think we're set. I think that's the best that we can hope for from that year. And then obviously that New Jersey kills it and go ahead, win a Stanley Cup.
Sure.
I don't care.
They just need to make the conference finals. They don't even need to win a Stanley Cup. So you don't have to cheer for them that much. But just just made the conference finals, and suddenly you've got the number 1 pick in Celebrini, the number 11 pick a defenseman, and let's say the number 32 pick, and pick Cole Hutson. So
yeah, right. Then you've got your high upside swing, you've got your number 1 center, and your top line defenseman. Amazing. But again, we're dreaming, I think, at this point.
Yeah, but
go ahead, Sheng.
I just wanted to, but we thought that it would be instructive, right? Training camps around the corner. Once training camp starts, we'll be kind of focused on that and the season. But I think it was good to kind of run through some of these names. Good for me, because I haven't looked too hard at it yet, and so now I know some of these names. So
yeah, there's going to be also a bunch of dudes that are going to come up from nowhere from either Canada or Sweden has been kind of, I won't say lagging in this year's class, but it's always been kind of regarded as a down year for Sweden. There is a Zetterlund and a Zetterberg in this class, neither of which are related to the two that you know of. So
no, okay.
But Zetterlund might be the guy that is regarded as the highest, and he's tiny. I think he's 5'9", so it's not really been regarded as a high class for Sweden. Finland has a few guys that are up front, like Kiviharju and Helenius. And then it's mostly been Canada and America, and then some Demidov, obviously.
How did the goalies look?
I have not looked into the goalies at all.
Okay. Just like the Sharks for the last 5 years. So
yeah, they'll find I really don't know.
I'm just joking. I know the Sharks have tried to find a goalie.
yeah. No, it's something that also kind of develops through the years, a goaltender who sticks out. Obviously, dudes like Wallstead and stuff kind of come up for many years. But I think the last question that we should try to answer is where Will Smith, the Sharks number 4 overall pick from last year, would kind of fit into this draft. I think it's an interesting question. I think he would still, if I had to guess, go 4th.
Yeah, you think so? Wow. Okay,
so
you think this group of Celebrini and Demidov, Eiserman are kind of like Fantilli. There's no Bedard, but it's kind of they're sort of the Fantilli, Leo Carlsson tier, and then Will Smith is just slightly below.
But I will say I don't think it would be above Eiserman. I think that Will Smith probably would go above Eiserman. In my opinion.
So then he might go 3. Oh, then who?
I think somebody jumps in. I think it's
like a defenseman or something like that, right? I got
exactly.
You.
I think somebody else jumps in above it throughout the year because I really have a lot of faith in Levshunov from what I've seen. But no, I think it's good. Sharks fans are going to get super pumped on Twitter about Macklin Celebrini for the next 10 months.
What's to be excited about this year for Sharks fans, right? The pick they get in the lottery, and what they can trade some of these guys off for the trade deadline, right? That's most likely. So
I think it's that. Eklund having a good year, Will Smith having a good year in college. Sure. I think that's all we have to hope for the next year. So, I think that's going to do it for this wrap up. I mean, we'll continue with a lot of the 2024 talk as we go through the next year. I'll just kind of like drop little snippets about guys that I'm watching. Yeah, I think this is a good overview for now. So
all right, enjoy Jason Demers, guys. It's a great interview.
Yeah, shorter episode this week, but the Demers interview, you should listen to the entire thing because it's fantastic. And don't forget to subscribe to the San Jose Hockey Now podcast on YouTube.
Yes, thank you.
We never plug it, but yes, subscribe. If you're listening and you haven't subscribed, you should do so now.
Anyways. We're trying to grind our way to 1,000, so we're up to 600. So yeah, we're getting there.
Yeah, I think we've doubled our subsriber count since we started.
I haven't mentioned it yet, but I'll just throw this tease out. I have some really cool giveaway items that will, when we get to 1,000 and maybe even 750. So I'll share that a little later. But I have some very, very cool giveaway items to give away. And I'll announce those later.
Yeah, if anybody wants me to sign a puck, I will sign a puck for you. Okay.
That's not one of the giveaways.
No, I know. I'm just joking. Anyways, have a good week, everybody.
Jason Demers is a Sharks fan favorite. Drafted in the 7th round in 2008 as a 20-year-old overager, Daddy became an NHL regular in just 2 seasons and was a big part of some really good Sharks teams like the 2010 and 2011 Western Conference finalist teams. In 2014, Demers was traded to the Dallas Stars for Brendan Dillon, and he's also played with Florida and Arizona and Edmonton. His career came to a full circle last season. Demers played 1 NHL game last year, but it was his 700th game, and it was at SAP Center against the Sharks. We've got Jason on today to tell us some Shark stories and also to ask him what his next step is. Welcome, Jason.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Jason, let's start off with the most basic question. Training camp's coming up. What's next for you? Are you hoping to hook up with an NHL team on like a PTO or an AHL deal, or what's the next step, do you think?
No, I mean, I'm pretty much I think I'm either right on the edge of retirement or retired. I'm probably going in a week to do some. It's funny, we were talking about TV before, so I'm going to go try to do some TV with NHL Network, and if that works out great. And then also I've been talking a lot with NBC with San Jose, so potentially doing some
cool.
stuff.
Oh shit, okay.
Post-game stuff, yeah. So
okay.
It's kind of come to I got the teeth slowly getting fixed. But I'm not gapped in the middle, and I've never had to worry so much about my appearance thinking about doing TV, but. I'm pretty much all retired. So unless I always try to leave like a Tom Brady that's here going on. So if I decide in a week that I have the need to play, I mean, I always say most athletes are 95% out and 5%. There's always that little sliver you keep open. But yeah, right now I haven't really been looking for anything or just been kind of figuring out what's the next steps.
Well, so are we breaking the news of you're announcing your retirement, or are we just going to get 95% there?
95.5. I guess when I'm on NHL Network, I might fully do it. But I mean, it's one of those things where it's like if you listen to this, you'll think, yeah, he's retired. It's really, but I mean, you never know. You might just see me at a rink somewhere just skating by myself in 2 months' time.
But once you get that sweet TV money, then you're out. So.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah. I'm waiting for that interview to pan out.
Well, that's awesome with the NBC Sharks because actually I'm on the pregame show. So I'll that'd be awesome. Yeah.
It's kind of been some like light talks
sure.
with people over there, and I'm kind of waiting to see what happens with the NHL Network. But I also, I keep all my options open, and I'm very much a busybody, so I'm gonna need to, whether I'm doing both or one or a million other things, I'll be able to handle it. So just kind of one of those things. I'm just kind of seeing how the schedule works out and figure out a way to kind of slot everything and make it fit like a puzzle.
Oh, nice. I like this. I like you playing NHL Network and NBC against each other. So, guys, listen up. You got to pay up Jason, all right? So there's 2 networks vying for his services right now.
It's all love, but it's at least I can badmouth the Sharks on NHL Network and then build them up when I'm on NBC.
Right. If you do work with NBC, will you move back to San Jose? I mean, back and forth between Arizona and San Jose?
Probably, yeah. Like
Yeah.
me and my fiance are pretty well set in Arizona, and we love it here. And we're also, she has a place in New York, and so we're kind of we kind of do a little bit of both back and forth, and we don't mind the travel. So for right now, so it's kind of like a perfect time, and it could fit well and work well for us. So.
All right, awesome, man. Well, let's go back to when the Sharks drafted you, and you were, overager, like I mentioned, and you weren't necessarily expecting to be drafted based on what I've read from back then. But it was in that season, your 20-year-old season, where you really blossomed. You went from 24 points to 64. And there's a great story that I read about your dad, actually, that he got so excited in the fifth round of the 2008 draft, when he heard that the Sharks had drafted Demers, but it actually ended up being the announcement of the Sharks drafting Julian Demers in the fifth round of that draft. But anyway, I wanted to ask you, though, which Sharks scout advocated for you? Because, that's so important in the later rounds, right? To have somebody banging the table for you.
Yeah, I mean, I heard through the grapevine, Gilles Cote was somebody that was very much in my corner, and he's a great man. I loved talking with him, and he always was an avid supporter of mine. And it was a funny story. I mean, we kind of had some thoughts. If I go back, because now that's a while ago, but we were talking to the Rangers had called and the Predators had called, and kind of the consensus was all like, if something happens, it's in the 7th round. So I wasn't really banking too much on it. And then, like you said, we had the old school HP computer or whatever, and my dad was just refreshing the draft, and all you saw was the first initial, the first name, and then the last name. So he's just clicking it, and we're watching for a friend of mine, Drew Paris, that was going to get drafted as well, and he clicks it, and it goes Jay Demers, and he literally fell out of his chair. He's screaming around the house, "Oh my god!" And then I think we were listening to the radio version of it because it was like on a delay, and you hear Julian Demers, and we were like, well, what the hell? Like, is it a typo? Who is that?
Yeah, is this a wrong name?
It was Julian, who's a great guy, and then literally we got the call probably like 30 minutes later that come the 7th round it was going to be us, and so it's kind of, and then we found out like New York, if San Jose had drafted me, New York was going to draft me 2 picks later, and then
nice.
Them Nashville, so it's like a whole weird thing.
Was that the Rangers or the Islanders?
The Rangers.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So it's just a cool kind of like, it's a funny story. And happening when you're 20, you're not really banking too much on it. Most guys typically get drafted at 18, and I don't know the number on people get drafted at 20, but it makes for a good story. So for me, I wouldn't have it any other way.
All right. Well, I have some breaking news to announce too. Actually, if you guys saw the background move in the background, it's 2:40 p.m. here. There was just an earthquake here in LA. So if you guys see something crash on my head, then carry on, guys. All right. So
like a big one or what?
I don't know how big it was. I just got to lower my phone. I started shaking though. Yeah. So there's a tropical storm here today in LA, and earthquake just hit. So.
Oh my god.
Geez, we were supposed to get some of that rain that's hitting you guys in Arizona. So we need it right now.
Yeah, for sure, right? It's been like 110 out there for you guys.
Oh, we're bone dry here. We are bone dry.
But anyway, so the show must go on, though. So I wanted to ask you, Jason.
If you need to, step off, we can.
Yeah.
Well, it's okay. The roof is still on top of me. If you guys see anything swinging or falling behind me, let me know.
all in the name of journalism, eh?
Exactly, right? That's exactly.
Right, yeah.
This is what's expected out of you at NHL Network, all right? So anything, anywhere.
Exactly. You're setting the bar high for me now, man. Okay. This guy's interviewing through an earthquake.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, what kind of, do you remember the draft questions that you got from the Sharks? Because they had a reputation back then for tough questions. Tim Burke is an old school guy. I've heard stories of them like shining a light in a prospect's face when they're interviewing you. So I don't know if you got any of that.
I got 0 interview questions, and I got 0 phone calls. It was all murmurs and like rumors that potentially.
Oh.
And other than Gilles Cote, who kind of I knew a little bit about him, so
Did he talk to you at all during your draft?
Like very little, but like, you know, I think my father talked to them a little bit because he'd watch me in Victoriaville and stuff like that. But like when I say there was zero, you know, I was preparing to go, you know, potentially take university and go play in McGill or Concordia or kind of decide the road there. So I was just more watching for a friend, and on the off chance, you know, something happened, and then it kind of just like whirlwind. It was literally like drafted, playing in the AHL that next year.
Well, it's a good thing that you were spared some of those old school tactics then.
I guess, right? I mean, I got a lot from Berkey in camps in the years following.
Couldn't escape it.
I know all of his antics and his shenanigans. So yeah, he's got a lot of them.
Yeah, you have any good Tim Burke stories since we're on the topic then? Because I've heard different ones about just how he was the bad cop in a good cop bad cop relationship.
I mean, he was always good to me in the sense of he liked my kind of, you know, my attitude and all that, but he always had some preconceived notions of the guys playing in the Quebec Junior Major League, and he wasn't afraid to let us know that he thought it was the worst junior major league and or major junior league, however you put it. I say junior major like junior major, like I'm French still, so but yeah, he always liked to rag on the Q, and I mean, he's just always camp would start and you have those first 3-4 days, and then probably right around the teal white games or the first exhibition game, he'd just be running around the room, and he'd come up to me and be like, "Hey, it's real bullets tomorrow. Like, it's not fake bullets, it's real bullets, live ammunition." So he just kind of try to scare you up a little bit, but no, he was always, and I never minded him. I thought he was he may be misunderstood in some circles, but I think deep down he just loved the game so much, and that's how he kind of showed it.
And let's go back to your, now that we're talking about it, your first couple of years with the Sharks. You kind of joined a pretty veteran team that had made it to the conference finals in back-to-back years. And then all of a sudden you're kind of playing big minutes. Back then, did it seem kind of easy, like you guys were going to contend for the cup every year? And then secondary question, was there anybody that kind of like helped your transition from juniors to the NHL? Because you said you only spent like a year in the minors. And then was Brian Marchman a big part of that too? A lot of questions.
I mean, Mosh there was such a large group of people that helped me those first few years, and I mean, listen, I was seeking it out as well, and trying to get as much help as I could. But I mean, Mush was huge. You know, David Conniff, Roy Sommers, they just were integral to like me growing up as a hockey player, and you know, it goes all the way to the players that were in the AHL with me, and you know, Patrick Traverse and Kyle McLaren was down there, so I got to learn a lot from those guys, and you know, even guys on the spectrum of Ryan Vesey and Jamie McGinn we came up together. Logan, we had such a good group down there, and then you know, when I came up my first year, when I was the year after my first year in the A, when I did 55 games about. I mean, I had Rob Blake, Dan Boyle, you know, Jumbo, Heatley, Marlowe. I mean, it just was like, you couldn't have asked for, all in their prime as well. Like, you know, they're all 30, and you couldn't have asked for kind of Ryan Clough, another one. I mean, it's just like Pavelski. It's like the list of guys that kind of helped me. I could just sit here all day and just name people that helped me. So I always hate missing out on guys, but you know, they might not have known it, but you know, because I came in as a young guy that, you know, I always talk a lot and I'm always upbeat, and I obviously always knew I could infringe on my rights as a rookie a little bit because I was so outspoken. So I annoyed the crap out of a lot of them. But you know, I was always watching them as well and listening to everything they told me, even if it was a lot of yelling and telling me to zip it. But yeah, it was just and to your point, like you said, about thinking it was easy. I mean, I never had any preconceived notions or was comfortable for, I mean, I don't even think for the 15 years I played professional hockey, I always was the kind of person that was trying to make it. And I never thought I never thought I had a spot, but I mean, in terms of like playing on a very good hockey team and in a great organization to start, I mean, you know, I remember Trent Yanni was telling me after my second year, you know, just being like, you can't take those playoff runs for granted because you can go on a drought for 10 years and there's guys that played a whole NHL career and they never got to the playoffs because it's that hard.
Yep.
And then after that, I mean, I had a good run in Dallas, but from Florida to Arizona, I mean, I was in the playoffs once the rest of my career. So it's like, you really don't know. So it was like, but you get caught up in the, like, you know, we're going to live forever and this is going to.
And Sharks fans did too then. We were always thinking, you know, this team's going to be great forever. And now we're kind of on the back end of that.
I know now you guys are kind of on the rebuild side and are in tough a little bit. But, you know, I think it's going to, as long as it's done the right way, it'll come back. But I mean, it's incredible how long of a run they went on and the Sharks organization went on and without having to kind of rebuild. I mean, it's very close to the same as Detroit. You know, Detroit's going through it now. They're trying to get out of it. They're probably, I think they went into that, you know, recession sort of, so to speak, before San Jose, and now they're kind of a couple years ahead. But it's tough, man. It's tough. You need, everything needs to just fit perfectly, and you need all the pieces in place. And I don't think people realize, the ones that are in good organizations, how very hard it is to keep that culture and that winning, you know, just that winning mindset, and also just having that luck. Like, you need a little bit of luck with injuries. You need luck with guys panning out, and you know, you can leave so much to skill and you know, your drafting capabilities, but people have to develop. And you know, it's developing is a two-way street. It's not just the player, it's not just the organization, it's the player as well. He's got to buy in. So, and you got to bring the right people that buy in. So, and they've just consistently did it for so long that it's like crazy to see them now. You know, I played in the AHL last year for most of the season and played against San Jose, the Barracuda, and I mean, they did struggle last year. Like, there's no way around it. And it was just tough. It was weird to see because you're so used to them being so good in every aspect and competitive. And even when I played in the AHL, like, we had a good team my 2 years I was there. And you know, we made the playoffs and won a couple rounds. So it's just, it's always different to see. But, you know, they'll make it back. Gruzy will get them on the right path, and they'll be, everybody will be laughing in no time.
Well, I want to mention that you can say the word shit on here, Jason. You're not.
I can. Okay.
Yes, absolutely, you can. Thumbs up.
I got close.
But
it's not NBC yet.
Yeah, exactly. So
I got my shit hair right now disheveled. So it's like, you keep the language 100%. I can't just be throwing everything to the wind here.
But you mentioned about the talking a lot, you know, coming in like that as a rookie, and you mentioned in other interviews that in your early days with the Sharks that maybe there's a perception that you took things a little lightly in the room. Of course, not that you didn't take it seriously, but you know, you're a young player in a very veteran room that is aiming to win a Stanley Cup. So maybe you had to learn a little bit about how to carry yourself in this kind of veteran room. So anyway, what's an example of maybe how you acted early on, and then a veteran that kind of let you know how to kind of handle yourself differently?
Well, to be honest, like, you know, the older I got, it very much was a coping mechanism for how nervous I was.
Sure.
And you know, I had tons of anxiety throughout my whole NHL career. Like I was saying before, I never felt comfortable a year in my career ever. I never thought, every time I came into a season, I felt like I had to make a team again and prove myself. Even when I had my 5-year contract with Florida, and I was I never felt like I was in a cool spot. So for me, it was very much, coming to the rink was very nerve-wracking every day. And, you know, I wanted to make it and I wanted to stay. So like, to me, not speaking and sitting there, like in my head would be just going crazy. So I would have to get that out. And for me, it was because if I go on the ice like that, I couldn't play and I would be just so stiff. So I literally, the way I had to cope with it was just being this over the top cartoonish character. And like I said, the perception of it, it was always very tough because it was there's such a duality with that of being so, happy and go lucky, as people think, eventually people are like, well, is this authentic? And does he care about hockey and this and that? But it was such the opposite of like, I cared so much that it was like too much for me to handle. Yeah. So I had to kind of get out and yell. And I was always screaming and trying to have fun, because to me, it was just tough to sit and be still. And especially if like I had a bad practice or a bad game. And back then when I started, like that probably was not the best. It would probably been better if I'd have flipped my career and started with Arizona and then ended in San Jose with a good team, because when you're there and you come in and you're 20, 21 and, you get Joe Thornton and those guys sitting across from you and, you're getting on the ice with them and you're not having a good game, and you're somebody that is trying to stay on a team, make a team, and that mindset of staying in the present moment, it's very hard. And those guys they were super hard on me, and I'm glad they were, because, I might not have made it as long as I did and growing without having those guys there. But, it was a kill or be killed kind of locker room and bench during games for those years. And I mean, that's what held the pedigree so high, is those guys kept everybody so accountable. Mm-hmm. Like, not just the young guys themselves too. So it was very, it was a great room to be in. And now that I'm hanging them up, but it wasn't an easy one, that's for sure. And nowadays you see a lot of teams that go on these losing streaks, and I was a part of a couple of them in Arizona and Florida. But I mean, back then it was like, to lose 2 games in a row was like, it was Armageddon in the locker room. You couldn't say boo, like walking in the room. It was like business. And for me, it was tough because I'd come in nervous. I'd have to be like serious. Yeah. And you joke around, and I got yelled at a ton, but I got pulled into Todd McClellan's office I don't know how many times, and because he thought I was unprofessional or this and that, because I was laughing. But to me, it was how I coped with the nerves.
Sure.
So, but you just can't articulate that at 21. You're just, you're yes, sir. And you kind of get a little bit angry with being told that you're not professional all the time. But that's kind of what happened with the perception. So, but it was, like I said, if I was a straight lace, sat back and had the mean mug face on all the time, I don't know how well I would have done for 15 years. I probably would have imploded at one
point. Good. You told this great story a couple of years, actually, speaking of Jumbo and sort of how hard it could be in a room for a young guy, that, you were struggling in a game, you didn't have a good game, and he didn't let you join the team dinner after the game, told you to go back to the hotel. And he told you can't be a young guy trying to make it into the league and play like that. But then, though, the other side of Joe, he went to the room later and, he talked with you for a couple of hours. Just was that sort of another kind of duality there, that, there's so many expectations, but, Jumbo, a big-hearted guy, of course.
I mean, yeah, I love that guy. Like, there's not enough. There's so many good things to say about that human being, and the things that would piss me off about him. I mean, the great thing is you could tell it to his face. But I mean, yeah, it was weird. I was playing, so you like don't really want to tell the full. Like we kind of all went out and had drinks the night before, and because back then, it's weird to be saying like back in my day, but 10, 12 years ago, guys went and had drinks before a game. Like that doesn't really happen at all anymore. I mean, it's a lot. The number is very small.
The night before, right? Not right before the game.
No, not right before the game. No. But the night before, like you'd go out for dinner and you'd have a couple bottles of wine, and you'd sometimes be a little bit tipsy going to bed. And we kind of had one of those nights in Florida. And when you're kind of playing on the West and you don't go to Florida that much, you go once a year. And back then it was once every 2 years because you'd flip.
Sure.
So it was like, it was like Mardi Gras for guys, just to be able to go out and have dinner. You're going from San Jose because you don't really see Florida that much. So, you'd go out and have a couple of drinks the night before the game and you'd play. And, Florida at that time wasn't really good. So they're kind of like, middle of the pack. So
you get away with it, maybe.
That's what I mean. It's, when you're, no one talks about that in the league, but like, from like looking at it when you're out of the game is like a betting perspective. Like, if I was a gambler or whatnot, these top teams, when they go play, if you look January to March and you'll see like Arizona or last place team, they'll win a game and you're like, how the hell did they win that game?
Right.
Like, there's no earthly possibility that they should be this team,
Colorado or whoever.
Yeah.
Vegas.
And you just have to look at, they've either had a rookie party 2 nights before, or they had a night out and there's a concert in town, and the guys just kind of go, you kind of wait, you risk it, you kind of go, well, do you think we're gonna win, or do you think we're gonna, like, it'll be a tough game? And you're like, no, we'll beat them. So that's kind of how it was back then, a little here and there. And it's such a long season, and I mean, nowadays, credit to a lot of the new generation. I mean, it's more turned into kind of playing video games and staying in, and not so much the socializing aspect of it. I think they still stay up as late as we did, but it was just different strokes. But it is wild it's such a long season, and you have to blow off some steam. You just can't not, and all the best teams will tell you that that's the way it was. And I mean, I think it still is on a lot of these good teams. You have to find a way to get away from hockey a little bit, because you'll go crazy just staring at it. And with anything in life, you need a little bit of change every now and again.
Do you have an opinion about when and why that shift happened? Like, was that because of maybe, social media? And so you're out the night before the game, someone's going to take a picture of you, or is it just the younger players and there's kind of maybe more focus on,
Well, it's so many things, but, social media is one of them. Like, listen, half the things that were done when before phones came out, I think anybody could say that was in that generation. So you would have got in trouble in one way or another doing something, especially if you're on the professional side of things. Like, you don't want to be seen. Like, I mean, these athletes can't do much anymore, especially the famous ones. San Jose wasn't really, the fans loved the Sharks, but it wasn't like you could be out night before the game and a fan would come up to you. Like, they'd probably want to sit down and drink with you. And then tell their friends that they drank with, Jason Demers, which, I mean, it happened a couple of times. And then you'd go out and play the next night, and like they'd beat the game, so you'd kind of be. But I just think there's just been a huge push for nutrition, and there's so much information on nutrition and the negative effects of a lot of these different lifestyles that were apparent back then, and I think guys are just more conscious of it, and teams are as well. Like, there was a nutritionist when I started, but it wasn't as comprehensive as it is now. These kids have so much more to pick from in terms of how to get their bodies ready. So you just see it, the proof's in the pudding. I mean, it's a different game now. It's not so much guys that are, big, burly, strong guys that lean on you, that are, meat and potatoes. It's more the vegans, very smooth and nimble. And, it's just a lot of guys that are, it's more yoga, and it's more longevity, and these guys just move so well. Everybody's so flexible, and they take care of their bodies. So I mean, it's just the natural shift, I think, in anything, just because there wasn't any information 15, 20 years ago about nutrition like there is now. It's just it's just so much more than there was back then. So
sure. And going back to those first couple of years, I wonder which conference finals loss felt like closer, that you guys were more in the series. There's I think 2010 Blackhawks and 2011 Canucks. Did they just seem like better teams, or was there something missing from the Sharks, between you guys in that final step, or was it just some bounces and that sort of thing? Both those
seasons. I feel like if we hadn't played Detroit in the second round and doing that East Coast trip, because again, like you talk about nutrition and stuff, like that travel to Detroit, 3 hours with time zone, playing playoff hockey in the second round, not usually it's just the finals, so you can get away with it. But I think that hurt us. And then I felt like the Chicago series, we got swept, which is like, I mean, you can't say anything against it. You got swept.
Right.
It is what it is. But I think we doubled their shots every game, and we caught Niemi, who he had that legendary run. And I mean, they were built so good. But I mean, game one, we were up 1-0 in almost the end of the second, and Niemi makes that save on Chloe on the goal line. And it's 2-0, and we win that game because they have probably like, I think at that point they had like 12, 15 shots, and we were at like 25, 30. We're just all over them. And then they tied it up and beat us 2-1 that game. And I feel like if we took that game, it would have been. And I don't think game 2 is really a game. And then in Chicago in like game 4, it was like the shots were like, 45-20 or something. And we lost another close one. So it was just like one of those, you think you're there, you can put pucks on net, but you got to score. But I thought we carried the play for, that first game was crucial for us. And then the second year was just, we were up 3-0 on Detroit right away, and we had them out, and then we let them get to 7. So if you just think playing every other day, going to Detroit, playing a game, flying back, playing a game to Detroit, play a game, fly back, and then right away play Vancouver, who we were better than all year, but we were just all hurt. I got hurt in game 7. I know Chloe was very hurt. Jumbo's shoulder was gone. We just had like, everybody was banged up after that Detroit series, which is funny. You say like, oh, how are you banged up after playing Detroit? Because they were just this highly skilled team, but they played us so hard, and we had beat them the year before. So it was like, they really wanted it, and we came out and took it to them. And it just was like, neither of those times were our time. We kind of ran out of gas. And the funny thing is that year with Boston, we kind of had Boston's number. We were just a team to match up perfectly against them. Better so than Vancouver. So it's like, you can go back and do that for most of the years, but I just feel like we didn't make it to the finals. But I thought we just had it's just one of those, it's down to the luck of staying healthy, and you lose some key guys and then some key plays, and then you're playing golf a week later.
Yeah, it's kind of underrated aspect is, I guess, the travel and all of the, like, not closing out a series, like you said, and then you have to go right away and playing.
Takes a toll on you, man. It's look at Vegas this year with just how they closed out teams, and I just thought they were just, it seemed like it was one of the easier years of winning a cup for a team, but I just thought they were just leaps and bounds better than most teams, and they just closed out when they needed to close out. Like, that's just those crucial kind of games in every series. You win those and it's easy. The year LA won, where I think they lost 3 games. It just was. Yeah. It's just being the ability to close out is huge.
And then 2012, the Sharks didn't make it out of the first round. You guys lost to the Blues that year. What do you think changed from the previous 2 years?
We just lost some guys, and then I think we just weren't the same team that was the first years. I think there's a lot of, if I remember correctly, we lost a lot of the guys that pushed in the right direction for us, and a lot of guys that were top notch, that in terms of in the room, and it just didn't. It just wasn't not that it wasn't the same. I think we still think we had the same team, but it just, the replacement for it wasn't our year either. And I think we were at this weird, we lost both in the conference finals. And I think there's this huge, everybody thought there's this huge need for a change, like top to bottom. And I remember there's a lot of guys that left and they didn't bring back. And it just kind of was one of those weird things of like, we're kind of in the room and we're like, we have it here. It's, you know, you can say that we're far off, but we're a player away, maybe less. And it might be even just a tweak mentally. And we kind of just overhauled too much, you know, you overcorrect, and then you get out in the first round, the next, and then after that, I mean, it's another, then they just get rid of as many as possible, because after you go from conference to first round, you know, a lot of teams organizations won't have the patience to wait. So
alarm bells start going off saying we got to change something. They're never going to go back again.
But you look back to the year before, you already changed something, and then it just snowballs. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you just kind of, it happens in most organizations and sports, and I mean that's sometimes it's hard to stand pat. It really is.
I mean, it all kind of culminates in 2014, which was your last full season with the Sharks. And that year, of course, the reverse sweep. But I wonder about your opinion, or the locker room's opinion, of two things that contributed to that happening in the playoffs. The Dustin Brown neon knee hit on Tomas Hertl. And I know Hertl came back from the playoffs, but I don't think he was quite 100%, quite yet. And of course, in the first round series itself, in Game 5, Jarrett Stoll's elbow of Mark-Edward Vlasic. And just what was your view of that, and just the rooms, what are you guys like, what the hell, or, that was just part of the game kind of?
No, I mean, that series kind of, we had a lot of things that went wrong in that series. I mean, those first 3 games, I mean, we were world beaters, but I mean, no one really talks about it, but our fourth line kind of won us those first 3 games. And we had Rafi Torres, but Rafi was playing on, like, he had nothing in his knee. And he was basically, he was doing anything he could to play. And I just think he ran out of gas after Game 3. And it just was one of those, he was hurt for most of the year and he was battling back, and he was like heart and soul of our fourth lineman team. And I think it was him, if I'm not mistaken, it was him, Mike Brown, and Desjardins, right?
I think so. Yeah. I
think so. I remember Mike Brown, yeah. But I don't remember if it was.
But they were they ran LA out of the building I think the first 2 games, and then everybody we were all piggybacking off of that. And Rafi, I mean, if anybody knows Rafi and watched him, I mean, he's such a game changer. And he's just one of those guys that alters series, and he was a hell of a player. I just think he got shortchanged with, he had a lot of those suspensions that
took
a lot of time. And then that knee injury he had was just horrible. Like, it just it's ones you don't want to see. And he's such a great guy. And I love Rafi. And I just thought he was such a big piece. And we were all, after Game 3, we were, after Game 2, I think we were like, man, we're gonna sweep them.
Yeah, you guys won 7-2. I just looked that up, and it was that line was Rafi Torres, Andrew Desjardins, and Mike Brown.
Yeah,
I remember Mike Brown having a goal from the slot, if I remember right. Just a real nice.
It was just like this weird line that they put together that was just killing guys, and you couldn't. It just changed the series. And then I think in Game 3, Rafi's leg was kind of starting to get, because you have to freeze you had to freeze, I think, his whole almost half of his body just to play. And just shows you how tough he is. And I mean, he barely had any feeling, I think, in his leg. So he was, he just kind of ran out of juice, and that line was pushing so much. And it was weird. In Game 3, we won. And I remember all the guys were talking to, a lot of the guys in LA that knew the guys in San Jose were texting with them, being like, just finish us, like, we want to go home. And I think we just got comfortable for Game 4. And, we talk about closing out a series, and they kind of won Game 4. And that our line, I think Rafi was, not that it got neutralized, but I don't know if Todd maybe started playing them less, or we kind of we switched something. And then you just kind of saw the momentum build a little bit. they won game 4 and they go into game 5. And I think game 5 was didn't they beat us pretty bad game 5? If I'm not.
That's and that's I don't know if the score of that one, but that's when Stoll elbowed Vlasic.
Yes, and then and then we lost. Then we got injured, and we lost. You know, when you think about it, Rafi's already halfway hurt, so we lose him, and then Pickles. I mean, that's 2 huge pieces.
Yep.
And then was it Vlasic or was it Ian White?
It was Vlasic.
Okay. Did White got hurt in that series too?
Oh, did he too? Okay. I don't recall that.
There, right?
Yeah.
No, I don't think that was that year.
Yeah,
was,
White might have been
Brad
a couple
Stewart,
years before.
Scott Hannon.
Yeah, it was Brad Stewart, Scotty, me, and
Boyle, Demers, Burns, Irwin,
Matty Ice.
Yeah.
But yeah, we just kind of, and that was the year that Burnsy was playing forward.
Yep.
Yeah, that was the year Burnsy played forward. I mean, they mixed together in a crazy way. But
yeah, we were going to ask you about that actually. Like, how much do these kind of run together after a while?
I mean, I feel like I'm doing pretty good.
No, you're doing great. Really well. Hey, you remember that 4th line?
Yeah, knocked them out of the park.
Andrew and Mike owe you. Yeah, you pulled their name out from the past.
Yeah. But yeah, and then it just was like, you know, you're in the room and guys are, you know, before every game, it's like, we need to win this game. And it's like, because this is dangerous now. And then we went to game 6 and it was like, oh my God, game 6, they were flying because they had blood in the water. And I don't know, game 7 was just a weird lead up to the game. I think we were down like 3-1 right away. And we just kind of ran, like, just running out of gas. And I think just emotionally, guys seemed like they were spent. And I don't know, it's just, it was so weird. And we did have a very good team that year. And it was just kind of one of those, like, you feel like if you get through them, you're gonna go far in the playoffs, like they did, because they're the team that won the cup. So you kind of try to take it, ages well, you're lost, but at the same time, like, you know, you're in the room after you're up 3-0 and you're like, this is gonna be a breeze, and then it's just like a week later, you're like, holy shit, we're going home. So it's like, that one hurt a lot. I know for the whole organization and us too. And then, I mean, you know, they made it back to the finals, but it just shows how competitive we wanted to be every year and how competitive we were for most of the time, you know, and those setbacks were like brutal. So,
yeah. Do you think the Kings kind of rope-a-doped you guys a little bit? Because you mentioned that some of the Kings texted the Sharks after game 3, you know, put us out of our misery. And I mean, I've never heard of that, you know. And so do you think they're a little bit of a mental game a little bit?
There was some like funny stories of like guys could tell you about, like, I know some guys knew, I'm pretty sure it was like, it might've been Brad Stewart, but apparently Daryl Sutter like called him because he had him after game 3.
Yeah.
And either he was up late or doing something, and he like left him a voicemail and was like, what are you doing, Stewie? Why are you beating us? And like, you know, it's just so funny that, you know, it all ended up, maybe they were rope-a-doping us, but it's just one of those, you know, I think they played loose after that. And then, you know, game 4, I thought game 4, it was a really tight game, and they scored a weird one to win. Like, I think Nemo like had the puck covered. Niemi had the puck covered or something.
Oh, that one. Yeah, right. It was Justin Williams, I think, was in the middle of that. Maybe.
It was like a weird one, and it just like kind of, you know, you go back into the room, and I'm sure they were like, we have something here. You know, it's like Florida this year where they were like, kind of like, we come back to LA, we'll win, and then it's like game. You know, the game to win was game 5 for us when we went back, because that's the one in San Jose you want to win, because, you know, you think you go back to LA and that's a tough one to win in LA. Right. And then all the momentum. So it's really game 5 always. And that's kind of what, you know, happened for us. It sucked. It still sucks.
Right. I mean, was there a moment, I guess our last question about this, I know this is tough.
Yeah,
too.
It's kind of dredging.
Yeah. And it's not that long ago, actually, like, but was there, you know, you mentioned after 3-0, you know, there was probably great sense of confidence in the room. So when was that moment where it was like, uh-oh, you know, like, was it after game 5 when basically you guys couldn't pull that one out?
No, it was like, you're kind of like, it's kind of like the lead up to game 7.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're just like, you're more like, you never want to be like that as an athlete, but it's just impossible. It's human nature. You're just like, you start hoping. You're like, well, I just hope they come out flat, and I hope we get some bounces. Instead of being like, we're gonna get, you know, when you're really dialed in as an athlete, you're kind of in that zone. You're like,
right, you dictate.
I know, and you're like, I know, and I know this is gonna happen, and you know, I'm controlling, and it's good. But then you're like, kind of like, uh-oh. You're just like, it's just one of those moments of, I hope, like, please, like, oh God, please, like, make sure they kind of come out slow, and we should win. And it's like, we could. And anytime you're speaking in kind of shoulda, woulda, coulda, you're in trouble, I think, in sports. So. And
the off season was kind of tumultuous for the Sharks after that. Joe Thornton got stripped of his captaincy. What was your or the locker room's opinion about that? It seemed like maybe Joe was getting scapegoated. Was there any of that out there?
I mean, I thought I loved both them and Patty, and it was never those two ever. So I always felt it as a slight to them. Just two guys that kind of bled the organization. I mean, they're still with the organization now, so which is great. So I think San Jose realized that in the latter stages, but I mean, you couldn't have asked for two better guys to come into an organization like this and do what they did. And, you know, they never said boo. And even when they left the organization, they always had the best things to say about it. And even after all those, you know, the captaincy strippings and stuff, things like that. But I mean, it just speaks to their character. They're two amazing humans, you know, family men. And like I said, they're back with the team no matter what. They just, the love they have for San Jose. And like most of us that were there during that time, it's hard to quantify it. There's just a special group. And so we did all think he did get scapegoated and kind of rallied around him. But I mean, it's the way of the game anyway. It's the business side of it that, you know, we don't understand as well as we'd like as hockey players. And you can get caught up in it emotionally, but he handled it phenomenally. I thought, you know, he was very upset for sure. And I'm sure there were some conversations had with him and Dougie, but you know, those were closed doors. But you know, he handled himself once the season started, and I thought as good as you could in that situation.
All right, well, let's get out of the dark of all this and let's bring some holiday cheer to this. We got to ask you about the holiday sweater video. But before we get there, though, there was one question I wanted to ask about Jumbo. And I read that he gave you your daddy nickname, but it was based on a game of cards when you kept calling yourself daddy. So are you, in fact, to blame for your daddy nickname?
I potentially am to blame for that nickname. And it just stuck. And it stuck, but I mean, it seems to, you know, my last 4 or 5 years, it kind of, there's a couple of people that still call me that, but thankfully it'll be when I become an actual daddy, and that'll be the next time. So at least now it's because I'm getting a couple grays, and it might be a little bit more fitting than it was, you know, 10 years ago.
Did you not like that nickname? Because I mean, it's catchy, Daddy Demers. I mean, it has a ring to it.
I mean, I didn't mind it. You know, I thought it was great. You know, guys found it funny, and you know, it made guys smile. So, and people seemed to like it. So for me, it was I was fine with it. It didn't even, you know, bother me. And then, you know, you started catching myself calling myself daddy in the third person. So and it just got weird.
Yeah.
When you're looking at Joe Thornton calling you daddy, it's like, it just,
the big beard.
Yeah.
Yeah, father himself.
Yeah, the granddaddy himself. Yeah.
But Jason, I want to thank you so much for your time. How, you know, your time's okay, because I got to ask you about holiday sweaters. So we got to, we got to do a deep dive on this stuff.
Yeah, shoot. No, go for
awesome. It. Okay, well, my question: who's to blame for a holiday sweater? And do you think that's the reason why the Sharks traded you at the start of the 2014-15 season?
Jesus.
I'm just kidding.
Maybe I don't have time for you.
Log it off right now.
If I remember correctly from that, I potentially had the best flow.
You did.
and the
and the dance moves.
Anybody. And I had the least amount of camera time, which was wild. They were giving a lot to John Scott, which I don't know if that's the guy I would give the rap.
He wasn't a natural. I like his podcast, but he wasn't a natural.
He's got a great podcast. Shout out to John Scott, that big bastard.
Well, I was kidding. No, I actually really love that video. And if you guys haven't seen it, guys watching, you got to check it out. It's a Christmas rap video starring Jason Demers, Matt Nieto, Alex Daylock, James Shepard, John Scott, Antoniemi, and some others. And so actually, well, then my next question is then, who masterminded this then? Okay, tell us the origin of it.
I don't know how it came to be, but I know like the funny thing is like Matt Nieto was like, he was like kind of like an amateur rapper.
He's a musician. Yeah.
And he had some like songs that he had rapped out on, I think for like our Halloween party, his first year, he like went in, he did a rap and everything, and he was great. He's such a good kid. I call him kid. He's old now, but for hockey purposes. But he was such a good sport, and then it kind of just like spiraled off of that. And then I don't know who wrote the lyrics. I'd like to know who wrote them.
You didn't write your part?
Hell no, I didn't write.
I wanted to give you the credit, all right? That you had a great flow, you had the dance moves, and you wrote your part. So.
Matt Nieto's gonna come on and say he wrote them.
Yeah, right.
I remember what was it? I'm so fly, I'm so sexy, even with my face pressed up against the plexi.
That's a good one.
That's you.
That was mine. Yeah, I know a hell of a chance I wrote that. I had a hard time saying the words, but it was funny that was like the cursed holiday video, if you think about it, because I mean, how many people on that video were traded from the Sharks?
Yeah.
The game after, yeah.
I
think Tomas is the only one that's left.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Nieto came back, but Tomas is the only one that's left.
And Stalock and Shepard and
Brendan Dillon was there too. He had like a little.
He came in at the end there, yeah. Well, it was such a. You mentioned Brendan Dillon. He shows up at the end of the video, like he's like, "Hey, I want to." This is like after the trade happens. Like, "Hey, I want to be in this on the video," and then he's told like, "Oh no, the video's already been shot." But like, I mean, it's so well thought of, and so like, yeah, like who? You have no idea of the origin, who wrote the lyrics, all that kind of stuff.
No, I'd have to
great
find
mystery
out.
And Sharks.
Sharks lore. It has to go down as one of the best sports. I don't know what you would call it. It wouldn't go under a commercial. It'd probably be like a spoof, sports, like a spoof song marketing.
Yeah, it's one of the last like really memorable ones. I know like the Bears had a famous one after their Super Bowl in the 80s. That's the one that stands out. There's a couple other ones, but that's one of the last really memorable ones, right?
Oh yeah, I mean you had Honor, you had all of them on there,
right? Dan Ruzanowski.
yeah. Ruzo's playing the turntables. God, that was hilarious.
But you got traded before Thanksgiving. So when did you shoot this video then?
We shot that video and I got traded. I think like up 2 weeks later.
Oh wow. Okay.
I think less than that.
Yeah.
Because it was like I went out for practice like a couple days later, a week later, and that's when they kind of pulled me off the ice to trade me.
So Doug Wilson reviewed everybody's tape from the video.
Oh, maybe Dallas really wanted you for your flow, actually.
They're like, this guy's too good to be for the team. Yeah, I hope it didn't factor into it. Then I'd really be nervous about how bad I actually was on that tape. But yeah, it wasn't long after that.
Yeah. But how hard did you guys try to get Jumbo or Patty or Pav or Logan in the video?
Those, that kind of stuff. Like, I'm surprised Jumbo did as many as he did.
Mm-hmm.
Most teams you'll go on. A lot of those guys don't. The top guys don't. Really
Sure. He makes a certain amount of money, scores a certain amount of goals.
Yeah, which is kind of funny because I'm like, I was like, just lighten up, like. Just stop acting like put your weights down and stop pretending like you're better. We know you're great at hockey. Like, just go do a video, like, because the kids want to see it. That's who cares the most about it. But, it's athletes. It's like the majority of them are got a stick job somewhere.
I mean, Jumbo with his beard, the obvious Santa Claus implications.
He was such a good sport for it. Like, just great. Like, it's hilarious. I mean, Pabs did. I mean, that all the top guys in our team did these great commercials. I feel like the San Jose commercials were. What was it? With Slappy? He did his.
Yeah, no, those are all great ones too.
With Ryan and with Chloe, and I mean, those were great. But I mean, that's kind of like when you're in a smaller market, you have to do those things.
Sure.
You have to have community outreach. So it's like, it's the way it was. And I mean, it showed because I thought we built a great product, and the fans came, and they still come against all odds, even though it's been a rough couple of years. And, for my 700th, it was like a full rink. So that was like, it was all for me, but they were there for the Sharks as well. But yeah, no, the fans are amazing there. And it's like, even though the 49ers are in Santa Clara, I just feel like the Sharks are the team of San Jose. So.
Well, we just have a couple more here for you, and we're going to get to your 700th game to close off. But got to ask you one more Shark story. What was the secret door knock for Marc-Edouard Vlasic? You told this great story on Craig Morgan's Coyotes podcast, how you guys used to knock on teammates' rooms on the road and then bum rush the player, wrestle and punch him. And it got so bad that Vlasic wouldn't open his hotel room door unless there was a secret knock. And so can you reveal the secret knock now?
I mean, that would be Torrey Mitchell. I mean, it was more for, cause we would, Vlasic was, he'd come out to dinner with us, but, he would always, you play that long as he's played and done the things he did. And he's a very dedicated and, he'd go dinner and then he'd, be back to the hotel room, and he roomed with Torrey, and, me, Torrey, and Devin Setaguchi all lived together. So for my first couple of years, so we would all hang out on the road, and we sometimes would want to go back and mess with Vlasic, and we'd hide and try to get in there. And Torrey needed to knock to make sure he could let him in, to know that the coast was clear. Otherwise he wouldn't let him in. And I don't know what the knock was. I think it might've changed every road trip.
They will have to.
I mean, that team was just chaos of pranks and guys giving it to each other in terms of, you weren't safe. You needed to have a thick skin on that team. And every time you walked in the room or on the road, there was landmine possibilities everywhere. So
well, since we're talking about, do you have one in mind that, one of the great ones from back then?
I mean, the whole, I just thought it was so funny that it happened a couple of times around the road where, and I've told this story many times, but just kind of, guys would get to the hotel and they grabbed your room key before you got it and they took off. And then, you'd get to the room and there'd be 5 guys in the room and you'd kind of get jumped and beat up in terms of guys would just be ribbing you. And then it just would kind of spiral where eventually you'd become part of that group, and then you would just go to the next.
You joined the gang.
You joined the gang, and then by the end, there was like 15 guys, 15 grown-ass men running down a hallway, just beating up each other. Guys who have their hands wrapped in towels, and so there's just always we're all kids, right? So there's just wrestling matches and things like that. It's not as glamorous as people think. It's just a bunch of cavemen. Just being kids and enjoying life, you know what I mean? So,
well, I'm disappointed that you don't know the secret knock, because I was going to knock on Mark's door on the road, which is, I think, his worst nightmare, to have media knocking on his door.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. If he hasn't changed much, yeah, I'm sure he don't.
I don't think he has.
No, yeah.
I can tell you.
Yeah, he doesn't like you, so don't worry about that.
And thank you so much for your time. We've been talking for almost an hour now, but moving forward in your career, you went on after San Jose to spend time with the Dallas Stars, Florida Panthers, Arizona Coyotes, and then your last game so far, if we're at the 95% retirement stage.
I really like it, Keegan.
Yeah.
Always keep the door open, baby.
The 5%. Your last game was with the Edmonton Oilers, your 700th game at the SAP Center. You were able to get your friends and family there too. Is that right?
Oh,
How special?
No, that game cost me a lot of money. So yeah.
How special was everything? You had the Oilers head coach Jay Woodcroft, who was your assistant coach in San Jose, recalling you for that game, having your friends' family. How expensive was it? Just recount your time.
Did you roll through your 2-way contract on that one day?
Oh yeah, I pretty much went. This whole year has been for free.
Yep.
To get this game, which I mean, the fact that it was in San Jose and it was where I was kind of scratched for my 699th, my 700th when I was with Arizona, and the fact that I had to go.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, my when I was in Arizona. It was in San Jose last game. It was the last game of the season too. And,
wow. Okay.
So, but I mean, listen, I'm grateful for that time because it made me keep playing for another 2 years. I mean, I don't know if I'd gotten it 2.5 years ago if I would have kept playing, but it also took me through a lot of dark times. And I had back surgery. I went to Russia. I played in
the Olympics.
The good times with it is I got to play in the Olympics. I got to play overseas and kind of enjoy that time. And then it was a grind in terms of 2 years of training to kind of get my back to give myself a good shot, because I mean, once it's hard to make it in the league when you're 21 and 2018, and it's even harder when you're 34 to come back. They're not really handing out contracts to 34-year-olds, and I kind of took it as I was trying to make the NHL again, because that's really what it was, because you're out of sight, out of mind. And it was really tough, and it wasn't an easy time in terms of not knowing if it was ever going to come or happen. Even the year in Bakersfield was hard to kind of come back and play. We had a great group of guys, and Edmonton treated me, as good as I could have been treated there. So, I have no bad things to say, but it's always tough as a hockey player, to swallow your ego and your pride. And that's the last kind of thing that hangs on for most guys. But I'm so grateful that not many guys get to kind of choose the way they go out. And if I do go out, I got to do it in SAP in front of, it was a full crowd. It was the fan appreciation night. And I got a crowd pop, and they got to announce my name, and everybody gave me a good cheer. And, my whole family was there, my fiance and her family, and one of my best buddies, and my niece, who'd never seen me play live. So it was kind of really cool to kind of full circle, close the circle. And, it was a lot of emotion that whole game. And I mean, just seeing a lot of the guys that are still in San Jose, and, seeing Logan and those guys, just kind of everything, just the whole year was like kind of remembering how everything started for me. Cause I mean, that whole season I was playing in the Barracuda. So we were playing against the Barracuda. So I was in San Jose most of that year, and we were staying at the hotel that I started my career in. I spent a full year in that Hilton on Alameda. And, I spent a full season in that room, in one of those rooms, and I get to go back. I got to stay in that hotel. I put my family up there, which they'd stayed there when I started. We had dinner in the hotel. We stayed at the Valencia in San Jose. It was like a wild, just mix of things, and it just, instead of when I went to SAP, I went to the right instead of the left. And I played against San Jose a ton after I left San Jose, but it was a cool way to finish it. It's something I'll kind of hold close to my heart. And when I have kids and all that, it'll be something I'll be able to share with them, because it was not the turnover in the first period that I don't want to get.
We didn't say anything about it.
I'm
gonna let that go.
That's part of the game. That chalks it up to the nerves of being back. And I mean, if I remember, we still won 6-1. So
yeah, exactly.
So you were you said you were playing against the Barracuda a lot. Do you remember anybody from the Barracuda that stuck out to you that you were defending against? Maybe, maybe not.
I mean, it was a weird year for them in terms of like, there was a lot of turnover now on the team. Like
from the year before. Yeah, a lot of younger players,
lots
first year
of
guys.
young players.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, like, Veal and Raska and those guys, I always think, those hard worker guys are going to get it. I mean, skill wise, I mean, you got your first rounders that were, Bordeleau and it's always hard. You have to look at it from a lens of where the NHL is going now over where I started, where you're like, oh my God, these young were so small, like they're going to get crushed. But, there's a lot of skill there that I think if it's developed the right way, it has a very good chance to be good. I just think that team is just, a lot of those young kids just learning to play that Sharks way, just a little bit harder and more grind and consistency. It just was their kind of team was just inconsistency last year. They'd have a game, they were phenomenal, and then you'd play them the next night, and it was like, who is this team? Which is that's youth, and that's learning to play with consistency, and that's the hardest thing to do in the league, is to just every game, night in and night out, be the best kind of version of you. So, but I had some good battles with Weisblatt. He pissed me off a little bit, so I tried.
That's good. That's supposed to be his reputation.
I tried to kill him every game. I got him a couple of times though, but I'm sure he was sick of me by the end of the last game, because I was.
What did he do to take you off? Just the regular stuff.
Well, I was hurt. And we played a game, and they played against us in Bakersfield, and he crushed like two guys, and then he wouldn't fight. And then he blamed it, and he blamed his shoulders. Said he had bad shoulders, why he's not fighting, but he was hitting everything. So I kind of was like, it was just didn't sit right with me. I'm like, at least have a better excuse, say you got a.
He does have bad shoulders, but yeah, that's probably not a good excuse when you're hitting it tight.
Yeah, well, there's a reason he's got bad shoulders if he's running around like that. So I'm like, well, then don't run around like an idiot. So we played him the next night, and I took a big run at him and got him good, and then just kind of kept hitting him, just staying on him. I mean, he's got some talent, and he plays hard, but I mean, I think it's hard when you're that big to hit like that much. It wears in the body big time.
He can hit though. I mean, he plays some hits.
Oh, he hits hard. Like he hit some of our guys last year, and I was surprised. I was like, he's got some weight to that body. Throwing the kitchen sink at him. He was throwing all 130 pounds.
He wet the equipment before. He's soaking wet 130 pounds.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's got to wet it before. Yeah, but he was he played well. And then those I always like those guys, the Raskas and stuff like that.
Yeah,
they kind of grinded. I know that Bordeleau should be decent little player as well. So yeah. And then if I'm forgetting everybody, it's just you get into that league, and I didn't know not one person I even heard of. So you're just kind of like,
yeah, it's all different and
changes
all the time.
I've forgotten that grind of the AHL. Jesus Christ, it's.
You knew John McCarthy, but he's the coach.
Yeah, I know. I saw Big John a couple times. So it's good to see him. I played with him my first year in the A, so it's just fun. Yeah, full circle.
But speaking of that full circle, I wanted to just pull back with a couple more questions about your 700th. Just how far in advance did you know that it was happening? Did Jay Woodcroft mention it like a month out, or so was it sort of planned a little in advance, or did it really kind of come together really fast? Like it was kind of like a surprise for you at the end of the season.
I mean, at the start of the year, it was just one of those weird years as well. I thought I was going to get called up early on. They were kind of hinting at it, and then I had a concussion issue. So I had to fix that just because, it just was something that needed to be addressed. So I was out for 2-3 weeks, and, Vinny Desharnais ended up going up, and he did great. He's going to be a great defenseman for a long time. But then that kind of, I came back from my concussion and kept playing, and then was like, whenever, if there's an injury, I'll go and I'll stay. And, credit to them. They stayed healthy the whole year on the back end. And so it's kind of like, it was like, Jesus, like they're going to be healthy the whole season. So
wow. Yeah.
which is what you want when you want to win. So I was just kind of waiting, and then I got another little injury. I got a high ankle sprain, and I was kind of out for a couple of weeks, and I was like looking at the calendar, and I was like, well, I got to kind of get back playing if I want a chance of getting called up, because they can't just kind of go into the room and be like, hey, call me up, like give me my game. You know what I mean? So it has to kind of be earned. And so I came back, and we played, and we went on like a huge run in Bakersfield. We won like 15 out of probably 13 games. We were on fire. We almost got fourth place, and it was like 5 games left in the season, and we were playing the Barracuda, and I was kind of like, I don't think this is going to happen. And I was like, I'm not sure. So we're playing the game, and I like looked down to the left and at the rink in the stands, and I see somebody giving me the finger. Yeah. Who's giving me the finger? I'm like, it's Dan Boyle. So I'm like, boy, like, what's Boiler doing at a Barracuda game? So he's laughing, and I played the game, and then I talked to him after, and he just texted me after, and he's like, are you going to get your 700th? I guess he looked at it and he was wondering why I was, he saw me at the game in the A at 35, because Dan's not really a social media guy, or I don't even know if he owns a flip phone. So he texted me and was just like, are they going to give you your 700th? And I was like, I don't know. So I kind of went to push that next day, and I kind of asked, and they were gracious enough. It worked out well. They were like, we're going to see what we can do. And they ended up setting it up for the San Jose game in San Jose. So I got to drive down to Anaheim, and I practiced in Anaheim with the guys. And then, it was a day game. It was a 1 p.m. game. So it was like I had no time to sit and think. It was just play. And then right after, I was in the parking lot all by myself right after, 5 minutes after the game. So, yeah.
Well, no, that's just an awesome story. I mean, I'm glad it all kind of, I mean, if you think about it, it's obviously disappointing that you weren't able to do it in 2021, but that season, I was covering the Sharks back then, and there were no fans in the arena. And by the end of the season, it was a very limited number of fans were allowed. So it would have been like 500 people or whatever if that became your 700th game. So kind of, I know it took you mentioned a kind of a dark period after that season, but it all kind of came together in the end. And you had last game of the season, like you mentioned, the Sharks, the SAP Center hasn't exactly been selling out for the last couple of years, but last game of the season, fan appreciation night, you got everybody there, and you were able to get your family and friends there too with enough time. The only problem was that you got hit with the last minute flight and hotels, right? It's a little expensive there. Yeah. But besides that, though, everything worked out just perfectly.
Yeah, I mean, Montreal to San Jose isn't the cheapest flight. But yeah, it was just like a perfect. I mean, and when you say that, it is true that it would have been in front of an empty stadium, and I got to see a lot of people that at the rink, and I mean, leaving in a full rink at San Jose at SAP, where I mean, that's still to this day the best arena I've played in when it's rocking in the league, bar none. It was just those times were incredible. That 8 years when I was playing with the Sharks, and even when the years I wasn't, when they went to the finals. I mean, that building was something else, and I mean, it shook. So I think I got hearing problems because of it. But yeah, it was a great. Like I said, it's to write your own story is always a blessing in itself. So it's like, for me, it was to be able to do that and finish it on my own. Not a lot of guys get to do that. I mean, not a lot of guys. Can I always say there's 2 leagues, but a lot of the top guys get to write their own story. But a lot of guys that have kind of been through it and up and down through their careers, they don't really get to choose when it happens. It's kind of chosen for them. So for me, I was super grateful to Woody and the whole Edmonton organization, and I mean, even Gersey and San Jose to kind of have that video tribute video and a little shout out for me. You know, I won't forget it. That's for sure. And to have my family see that was really cool. So they, in my fiance and all that, it was
sure
good memories to take with me. So.
Well, Jason, I want to thank you again so much for your time. 95% congratulations on a great career.
I won't let this one down.
You got to come back and tell us when it actually happens.
Yeah, I'd say
we'll have like a special.
Yeah, I feel weird giving the official, you're retired, when, you know, I get to play a kids game for 15 years. I don't consider it a retirement. It's just you know, I'm looking for employment now. Is more the I'm not playing a game anymore. I'm looking for a job. So yeah. But thanks so much, Jason. Sorry, yeah, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be on the phone with you guys, or whatever this is, Zoom.
Podcast.
Yeah. The podcast, yeah.
Gotta get with the times, Jason.
I know. Now that I'm in TV, I gotta get all the lingo down.